Mist blankets the valley. Down the old stone road to the cathedral, a black carriage rolls forward, drawn by horses with eyes red as burning coals in broad daylight. In the highest chamber of the church, a bride stands before a mirror. 11 pounds of white silk, hair black as ink, and a silver pendant that suddenly grows warm against her throat,
What secrets do you hold?
as if it has just recognized something she does not yet know. Last night, her mother wept as she pressed it into her hand. She said only one thing: whatever happens tomorrow, know that I love you. A strange thing to say to a bride. The bell tolls. 7 times 500 guests rise to their feet. A king who has not aged in 22 years waits at the altar. A pale hand extends to receive the ring. Then he stops. Those eyes look past her shoulder, toward the front pew, where her younger sister is smiling. A very small smile. A very private smile. The smile of someone who has finally gotten exactly what she wanted. You said. Mist blankets the valley. The dress weighed 11 pounds. I know, because I weighed it myself. 3 days before the wedding. On the kitchen scale my mother used for flour, 11 pounds of white silk, and pearl beading, and lace older than the kingdom of Blackthorn itself. Lace my grandmother wore. And her grandmother, and every Heartwood bride, going back 200 years. Except none of them married a vampire. That part was mine alone. I stood before the mirror in the bridal chamber of St. Aldrick's Cathedral, and I watched a stranger stare back at me. Black hair pulled tight against my scalp, pale skin made paler by powder, eyes the color of winter rain, a mouth that had not smiled in 3 days, 26 years. That was how long I had been preparing for this morning. 26 years of lessons, of languages, of learning which fork to use at a vampire's table, which words to never speak aloud, which silences meant respect, and which meant death. 26 years of being told I was special, chosen, promised, a gift, and here I was, the gift, wrapped in 11 pounds of silk. Waiting to be opened, I touched the pendant at my throat. Cold silver, heavier than it looked. My mother had pressed into my hand the night before, her fingers trembling, her eyes wet, her mouth opening and closing, like she was drowning on words she couldn't find. She had said only one thing: whatever happens tomorrow, know that I love you. Strange thing to say to a bride, stranger still. On a morning like this one. But I had thanked her, kissed her cheek, watched her leave, and then I had stood at my window until dawn, looking out at the carriages arriving in the courtyard. Black carriages, drawn by black horses with red eyes. The carriages of the Ravencrest household. The carriages of my future. I did not sleep. I do not think a bride is supposed to sleep on the night before her wedding. Especially not this kind of wedding. The first time I heard the word vampire. I was 4 years old. My father sat me on his knee in the great library of Heartwood Manor. He was a serious man, a quiet man. A man who wore his title like armor, Lord Edmund Heartwood, third of his name, master of the eastern provinces, holder of the seal of the bone-white tower. He looked at me with those gray eyes I had inherited, and he said, "Ophelia, you are not like other little girls." I remember saying I knew. I remember saying it, because every other little girl I had ever met was allowed to run in the garden, to climb trees, to eat sweets after supper, and I was not. He smiled, but it was not a smile that reached his eyes. "There is a man," he said, "a great king. He lives in a castle far to the north, where the snow never melts. He has been waiting for you to be born for a very long time." "How long?" I asked. 500 years, my father said. I did not understand. I was 4. But I understood the weight of his hand on my shoulder, and I understood the look in his eyes. And I understood, even then, that I was not a daughter the way other little girls were daughters. I was a promise, a signature on a piece of paper my ancestors had signed. Before I was anything more than a possibility, the Heartwood Compact, renewed every 2 generations, a bride, a pure-blooded daughter of the noble house, given to the king of the Ravencrest line. In exchange for the protection of the eastern provinces, in exchange for the wolves staying out of our forests, in exchange for the plagues passing over our villages, in exchange for the harvest, Year after year after year. A bride, a small thing. A single life, set against the lives of thousands. Easy mathematics. I have known this math since I was 4 years old, so when I tell you that I walked into St. Aldrick's Cathedral that morning with my chin held high, understand what I mean. Understand that I had been climbing toward this morning for 26 years, one stair at a time, learning each step, memorizing each face I would meet, rehearsing each word I would say. I was not afraid. I was prepared, which, as it turns out, is a very different thing. The doors of the cathedral were oak, black oak, carved with scenes from the old wars, when the Ravencrest line first descended from the northern mountains, and offered the kingdoms a choice: submit or burn. The kingdoms submitted, most of them. The two doors swung open at exactly the 7th chime of the bell. My father took my arm. He did not look at me. He had not looked at me since the previous evening. I thought, perhaps, that he could not bear to. I was wrong about a great many things that day. But I did not know it, yet the aisle was long. Longer than I remembered from the rehearsal. The pews were full. 500 guests. 600. I had stopped counting at 400 when I gave up on remembering names. Dukes and duchesses from every province. Ambassadors from the eastern kingdoms. 3 queens. A regent. The high priest of the silver flame, draped in robes that swept the marble floor, and at the far end of the aisle. Beyond the white roses, beyond the candles, beyond the kneeling figures of the choir, him Lord Caspian Ravencrest. I had seen him 12 times before, once every 2 years. Since I was 4, he came to Heartwood Manor for the ceremonial visit. He sat at our table. He drank from a goblet that never seemed to empty. He asked me questions about my studies, about my languages, about my opinions on philosophy and history, and the proper governance of small territories. I had grown up watching him watch me. He did not age. I did. That was the strangest part. He had looked exactly the same when I was 6, and 12, and 22, and now. The same dark hair, the same pale skin, the same warm eyes that caught the candlelight, always the same age. Somewhere between 30 and 35. Frozen in the moment of his turning so many centuries ago. But that morning, standing at the altar, he looked different. I could not say how, just different. He watched me walk toward him. He did not smile. I did not smile back. That was the protocol. A Ravencrest bride does not smile on her wedding day. Smiling is for women who marry men. I was marrying something else. I reached the altar. My father released my arm. He stepped back. I climbed the 3 marble steps. I stood before Lord Caspian Ravencrest, and I looked up into his eyes, and I felt nothing. That was also the protocol. The high priest began the ceremony. He spoke in the old tongue, the language of the compact, the language no living person spoke anymore. Except for ceremonies like this one, I understood every word. I had been taught to understand every word. I listened as he recounted the history of the agreement, the signing, the blood that sealed it, the line of stretching back through the centuries, each one a name carved into the great stone in the courtyard of Castle Ravencrest. Names I had memorized, names that would soon include mine. The vows came next in the old tongue, each one a binding, each one a chain forged of words. Lord Caspian spoke first. His voice was low, steady. He pledged the protection of his line, the strength of his name, the shelter of his castle. He pledged these things to me, and through me, to the eastern provinces, and through the provinces, to the kingdom. I listened. I waited. Then the priest turned to me. He held out the silver ring, the Ravencrest ring. The ring every bride before me had worn. The ring with the small dark stone in its center, a stone that was said to be a drop of the founder's blood, crystallized by time and sorrow. I extended my left hand. Lord Caspian reached out to take the ring, and then he stopped. Have you ever felt a moment crack? Not break, not shatter, crack. The way a wine glass cracks when something cold is poured into it too quickly. A thin sound. A small sound. A sound only you can hear. In the inch of air between your face and his, the cathedral was silent. His hand was inches from mine. His fingers were not moving. I looked up at him. His eyes were not looking at me. They were looking past me, over my shoulder, into the front pew of the cathedral, where my sister sat in pale pink silk and white pearls, where my sister was watching us with her hands folded in her lap, and her perfect lips slightly parted. I did not turn around. I did not need to. I could feel her behind me. I could feel her like you feel a candle that has just gone out in a room you cannot see. Lord Caspian's hand dropped. He did not take the ring. He stepped back from me. The high priest looked up from his text. His face was confused. His hands, holding the ring, hovered in the empty air between us. My lord, he said. Lord Caspian was not looking at the priest. He was looking past me. Then he stepped down from the altar. 1 step, 2, 3. His boots made a sound against the marble that I will hear in my dreams for the rest of my life. He walked past me. He did not look at me. He did not pause. He did not apologize. He simply walked past me. Like I was a piece of furniture, like I was a column, like I was a name that had been called in error and could now be dismissed. He walked down the 3 marble steps of the altar. He walked to the front pew. He stopped. He looked down at my sister, and he sank to 1 knee before her, in front of 500 guests, in front of 3 queens and a regent and the high priest of the silver flame, in front of my mother and my father and the ambassadors of every province in the kingdom. He took her hand, he said, in a voice that carried to every corner of the cathedral. My heart has chosen this one, not the other. I did not move. I want to be clear about this. I did not turn around. I did not gasp. I did not stagger. I did not weep. I did not do any of the things a woman is supposed to do when a vampire king walks away from her at the altar. I stood there. I stood there and I watched the back of his head as he knelt before my sister. I watched the way the candlelight caught the silver thread in his cloak. I watched the small movement of his shoulders as he raised her hand to his lips. I watched all of it, every second of it. And I did not move because I could not, because something inside me had simply stopped. It was not pain. Not yet. Pain would come later. What I felt in that moment was a strange and terrible quiet, as if all the sounds of the world had been turned down, as if I were watching a play from the very back of the theater, and the actors were very far away, and none of it had anything to do with me. A woman gasped somewhere in the cathedral. A small sound, a polite sound, the way a guest gasps at a duel when one of the fighters draws first blood. Then, whispering like wind through dry leaves from every direction, the whispering of 500 people who had come for a wedding and were now, instead, watching something they had never seen before, something they would tell their grandchildren about. I was there. I saw it. The Ravencrest king, the Heartwood girl, the sister, my mother. I heard her cry out, a single sharp sound, like a glass dropped on a stone floor, then a softer sound, a heavier sound, the sound of a body collapsing into a pew. She had fainted. I did not turn to look. My father did not move from where he stood at the foot of the altar. He did not go to his wife. He did not go to me. He stared at the floor in front of his boots, like a man who had been struck across the face with a stone. The high priest was still holding the ring. He looked at me. I looked at him. I do not know what he saw in my eyes. I do not know what was on my face. I only know that he lowered the ring slowly, very slowly, until his hands were at his sides, and he closed his eyes, and he whispered something I could not hear. Then I turned slowly, just my head, just my shoulders, slowly, slowly, like a woman in a painting deciding to look at the viewer, and I saw them, Lord Caspian, on 1 knee, his pale hand around my sister's pale hand, his eyes lifted to her face, and Rosalind, my sister, my little sister, my Rosalind, she was looking down at him with her mouth slightly open, and her cheeks flushed with color, and her eyes very, very bright, and she was smiling, a small smile, a private smile, a smile so soft and so quiet you would have to know her for 22 years to recognize it. I knew her for 22 years. I recognized it. It was the smile she wore when she got exactly what she wanted. I do not remember leaving the altar. I have tried to remember. In the months that followed, I have tried very hard. But there is a gap. A blank place in my mind where the walking back down the aisle should be. I remember my father's hand on my elbow. I remember someone. Perhaps the priest. Perhaps a Ravencrest attendant. Opening the great oak doors. I remember the cold air of the courtyard hitting my face. I remember the way my breath came out in a small white cloud. I remember the carriage, our carriage. The Heartwood carriage. With the painted crest on the door. The driver was already standing beside it. He had not expected to drive us home yet. He had expected to drive my father and mother home. With me staying behind, with me leaving in a different carriage, with a different crest, the carriage that would take me to Castle Ravencrest, to my new life, to my husband. His face was very pale when he saw me coming. "My lady," he said. I did not answer. My father did not answer either. He handed me into the carriage. He climbed in after me. He pulled the door shut. The carriage began to move. I stared out the window. I watched the cathedral grow smaller behind us. I watched the great oak doors close as the guests began to filter out, in pairs and small groups, hurrying to their own carriages, eager to be the first to spread the news. The Ravencrest king, the Heartwood girl, the sister. The sun was high. I had not noticed before. I had not noticed how bright the day was, how blue the sky, how cruel the light, falling on the cathedral roof, falling on the white roses in the courtyard, falling on the small crowd of common folk who had gathered at the gate to catch a glimpse of the new vampire queen. They were looking at our carriage now. They were looking at me. I could see their faces through the window. I could see the way they leaned to one another. I could see the way their mouths moved. I closed my eyes. My father did not speak the entire ride home. When the carriage stopped in the courtyard of Heartwood Manor, he climbed out first. He held the door for me. I climbed out. I walked into the house. I walked up the great staircase. I walked down the hall to my bedroom. I closed the door behind me. I stood in the middle of the room. And then, and only then, I let the dress fall, 11 pounds of silk and pearl and lace. It hit the floor with a sound like a body falling onto snow. I stepped out of it. I sat down on the edge of my bed in my shift, and I put my hands over my face. And I did not cry. I have not cried yet. I do not think I am going to. The whispering started before nightfall. I could hear it from my window. The servants in the courtyard, the kitchen girls, the grooms, the voices low, the voices afraid. They did not know I could hear them refused her. Right there at the altar, took the sister. Lord Edmund hasn't spoken a word since. Lady Beatrice is in her chambers. The physicians called twice. Imagine being so unwanted that even a monster won't take you. I sat on the edge of my bed for a very long time. The light through the window changed. Gold to amber, amber to red, red to gray, gray to dark. A maid came at one point with a tray. She knocked twice, softly. She set the tray outside the door. She did not call my name. She did not ask if I was hungry. She left. I did not get up. I could not get up. It was not grief. Or it was not only grief. It was something heavier than grief. It was the feeling of a foundation collapsing beneath a house. The feeling of the floor going soft. The feeling of a world that had made sense for 26 years, suddenly making no sense at all. I had been raised for one purpose. I had failed at it, not failed. That was not the right word. I had been rejected at it. There is a difference. Failure is something you do. Rejection is something done to you. I sat there on the bed, and I thought about my life. About every lesson, every language, every careful conversation with Lord Caspian, over a goblet of wine in the great hall of Heartwood Manor. Every time he had looked at me across the table and asked a question and listened. Truly listened. To my answer, I had thought he was learning me. I had thought he was preparing for me. I had been wrong. I had been wrong about all of it. What had he seen in those 12 visits? What had he watched me become, year after year, that had led him to walk away from me at the altar? Was I not beautiful enough? Was I not clever enough? Had I said the wrong thing? Worn the wrong dress? Held my fork incorrectly at supper the last time we dined together? Had I always been a disappointment to him? Had he always known he would choose her? Was the entire compact a lie? I had so many questions. I had no one to ask. It was past midnight when my mother came. She knocked once, softly. Then she opened the door without waiting for me to answer. She had been crying. Her eyes were swollen, her face was pale. She held something in her hands, a small wooden box, the kind a woman might use to keep letters in, or hair clippings from a dead child, or other things she did not want anyone to see. She closed the door behind her. She came to the bed. She sat down beside me, slowly, the way old women sit. Although she was not old, she set the box on her lap. She did not look at me. She looked at her hands. Ophelia, she said, just my name? I waited. She did not continue. I watched her hands. I watched the way they trembled around the corners of the wooden box. I watched the way her wedding ring caught the candlelight. The ring my father had given her 30 years ago. Whatever it is, I said. My voice surprised me. It came out steady, almost calm. Whatever it is, Mother, tell me. She closed her eyes. When she opened them, they were full of tears. I should have told you years ago, she said. I should have told you when you were a little girl. But I was afraid. And then I was used to being afraid. And then I forgot how to tell you. And the years went by, and every year it became harder, until I thought, perhaps it does not matter. Perhaps she will go to the castle and live her life and never know. Perhaps that is kinder. I did not move. But after today, she said. After what happened, Ophelia, I cannot let you live in this house another night without knowing. I cannot. I would be the worst kind of liar. She opened the box inside. A small bundle of cloth, yellowed by time, folded carefully. Beneath the cloth, a letter, sealed with red wax. A wax I did not recognize. The seal showed an emblem I had never seen. A bird with outstretched wings, holding something in its talons. A small star. She lifted the cloth. Beneath it, she removed a single object. A lock of hair, long, black, tied with a red ribbon. Black hair the exact color of mine. Whose hair is that? I asked. She looked up at me, for the first time since she had entered the room. Yours, she said. From the day you came to me. The room went very still. I don't understand, I said. You were not born in this house, Ophelia. The words were small, quiet, plain. I heard them. I did not understand them. She took my hand. Both of her hands wrapped around mine. They were so cold, colder than they should have been. I felt the trembling in her bones. 26 years ago, she said, a woman came to this house in the middle of a storm. She had been injured, badly. She was bleeding through her cloak. She had ridden a horse to death getting here. I do not know how she found us. I do not know who told her to come, but she came, and she stood in the front hall, with rainwater pooling around her boots, and she pressed a baby into my arms. A tiny baby. Wrapped in this cloth, she touched the yellowed bundle, and she said, hide her. Do not let anyone know where she came from. When she is 26 years old, send her to Winifred, in the eastern...
She will do the rest.
That is all she said. Then she left. She walked back into the rain. She mounted another horse. I never saw her again. She looked down at the lock of black hair. The baby in the cloth was you. I was not breathing. I was sitting on the bed and I was not breathing. Your father, she said. Edmund. He came home that night. I told him. I told him everything. We had been married 3 years. We had lost 2 babies of our own. We were old enough to be afraid we would never have one. And here was a child. Here was a daughter, pressed into my arms by a stranger in the rain. And I had already loved her, already. By the time Edmund came home, I had already named her. She lifted her eyes to mine. Ophelia, she said. From the old book in the library. Mother, I said. She closed her eyes. I am not your mother, she said. The words hung between us. I could not pick them up. I could not put them down. You raised me, I said. I did, she said. I did. With every part of myself. I raised you and I loved you, and I never told you. I was so afraid I would lose you that I never told you the truth. And then the compact came. The Ravencrest visit. The Lord chose you when you were a small child. And I thought perhaps this is fate. Perhaps this is what the woman in the rain meant. Perhaps your life was already written, and we were only meant to keep you safe until it began. Did Father know? He knew everything, and the Ravencrest king, Lord Caspian. Did he know? She looked at me for a long time. I do not know, she whispered. Ophelia. I do not know. But I have wondered. I have wondered for many years why he chose you. Out of all the noble daughters in the kingdom, he chose you. And tonight, after what happened today, I wonder if I have been a fool. I wonder if he always knew. I wonder if you were never truly hidden at all. She lifted the letter from the box, the red wax, the seal of the bird with the star in its talons. This came with you, she said. It is sealed. I never opened it. I was told to give it to you. With these words, when she is ready to ask who she is, when she has lost the life she thinks she was given, when she has nothing left of who she was, give her this letter, and tell her to ride to the eastern wood, to find Winifred. Winifred will tell her the rest. She placed the letter in my hands. It was warm. It should not have been warm. It had been in a wooden box for 26 years, but it was warm, warm against my palm, warm like something that was alive. I looked at the seal, the bird, the star. I did not recognize the emblem, but I felt something move inside me when I looked at it. A small thing. A quiet thing. A thing I had no name for. A thing that had been sleeping inside me for 26 years. A thing that was beginning to wake up. I did not sleep that night either. I sat in the chair by the window with the letter in my lap, and I watched the moon move across the sky. My mother had left hours before. After I had asked her to leave, after I had kissed her on the cheek and told her I needed to be alone. She had wept. I had not. I had walked her to the door of my room, and I had closed it behind her, gently, and I had returned to the chair. I did not open the letter. Not yet. I held it. I turned it over in my hands. I traced the seal with my fingertip. I held it up to the candlelight to see if I could read anything through the parchment, but the paper was too thick. The night was very long, sometime before dawn. I made a decision. I would not stay in this house. I would not wait for the next humiliation. The wedding of my sister to the king who had refused me. The endless visits from sympathetic neighbors. The thinly veiled smiles. The endless whispered conversation stopping whenever I entered a room. The slow, polite death of a woman who has been rejected by the only future she was ever given. I would not be that. I would not let myself be that. I would go to the eastern wood. I would find this Winifred. I would learn who I was. Not the daughter of Edmund and Beatrice Heartwood, not the bride of Caspian Ravencrest, not the sister of Rosalind. The woman beneath all of those names, whoever she was. I dressed in dark traveling clothes, the plainest I owned. I tied my hair back. I took a small bag and packed only what I needed. The pendant my mother had given me. The letter with the unbroken seal. A dagger my father had given me on my 12th birthday. In a leather sheath, a small purse of coins, a flask of water, a cloak. I wrote a note. I left it on my pillow. I have gone to find out who I am. Do not look for me. I love you both, Ophelia. I went down the servants' stair. I went to the stable. I saddled the gray mare myself. She was old, quiet. She would not draw attention. I led her out the back gate. The eastern sky was just beginning to lighten when I mounted. I did not look back at the house. I rode east toward the wood, toward whatever was waiting for me there, toward whoever I was about to become, and somewhere far behind me. In a castle of black stone where the snow never melted, a vampire king sat awake in his chambers, with his head in his hands, and somewhere closer, in a pew of St. Aldrick's Cathedral that was now empty and dark, the high priest of the silver flame knelt before the altar and prayed. And somewhere, in a small room in the eastern wing of Heartwood Manor, a young woman in pale pink silk lit a candle. She wrote a letter. She sealed it with wax. She gave it to a servant who had served her in secret for 6 years. She watched the servant ride out into the dawn. The letter was addressed to Lord Aldrick Ravencrest. It contained 2 words, she knows. 3 days east of Heartwood Manor. The road ends, not narrows, not turns, ends. The cobblestone simply stops. The way a sentence stops when the writer has lost the courage to finish it. Beyond that final stone lies the eastern wood. And beyond the eastern wood lies nothing that any map in Blackthorn cares to name. I dismounted at the edge. The gray mare would go no further. I knew this without asking. Horses know things. Horses know what lives in the dark places of the world. And the gray mare, old as she was, had begun trembling at the sight of those trees from a quarter-mile away. I tied her to a post a traveler had driven into the ground at some forgotten time. I left her with water and the last of the oats. I patted her neck. She turned her head and looked at me with one wet brown eye. And I felt very strongly, in that moment, that she was telling me to turn around. I did not. Turn around. I had not eaten in 2 days. I had not slept properly in 4. The pendant at my throat was warm again. Warmer than the morning sun could explain. I walked into the trees. The wood was not what I expected. I had grown up on stories. Old stories. The ones the kitchen women told when they thought the children were sleeping. The eastern wood, where the trees grew teeth, where the moss whispered to itself, where men who entered came out 40 years later as boys with white hair. Or did not come out at all. I expected horror. What I found was silence. Not the absence of sound. A different kind of silence. The kind of silence that has weight. The kind of silence that listens back. The trees were old. Older than the kingdom of Blackthorn. Older than the Ravencrest line. Older than the Compact and the Cathedral and every law that had ever been written. They rose around me in massive black columns. Their bark cracked into patterns that almost looked like writing. Their branches knit together so tightly above me that I could not see the sky. The light beneath was green, the kind of green that lives at the bottom of deep ponds. I walked. I do not know how long I walked. Time did strange things beneath those trees. My watch had stopped. The pendant glowed faintly now, faintly but visibly. A small silver moon at my throat. I followed a path that may not have existed before I stepped onto it. I followed it because there was nothing else to follow. The pendant grew warmer. I walked, and then, without warning, I was no longer alone. I did not hear her approach. She was simply there. A figure on the path ahead of me. Small. Hunched. Wrapped in a gray cloak that seemed to be the same color as the mosses on the stones around her. She stood with her back to me. She was looking at something I could not see. I stopped. I did not draw the dagger. Something told me a dagger would not matter here. "You took your time, child," she said. She did not turn around. Her voice was not what I expected. It was not the cracked whisper of a forest crone. It was not the sing-song of a sorceress. It was the calm, even voice of a woman who has been waiting a very long time for a guest, and has decided not to be irritated about it. "You are Winifred," I said. "I am. You knew I would come. I knew you would come 26 years ago. Today, this hour, this moment. I am only surprised you are wearing such practical boots." I expected the silk slippers. She turned then. She was old. That was the first thing. Truly old. Her face was a map of every road she had ever walked, lined and folded and cross-hatched with the years. Her hair was white, pure white, down to her waist. Her eyes were the color of stones at the bottom of a river, but she straight. And she did not look frail. She looked at me for a long moment, up, down, the way a woman looks at a length of cloth she is considering buying. "You have her face," she said, "mostly. The chin is your father's. My father is Lord Edmund Heartwood. Your father was Lord Bias Mercer," she said. "Captain of the Southern Guard. Killed 3 weeks after you were born. Stabbed in the back by a man who had no name and no orders. In an alley in the city of Vance, where he had gone to investigate something he should not have been investigating." I stood very still. I had not braced for a father. I had braced for a mother. I had not thought I would have a father waiting in the woods, with a name, and a profession, and a death. "Come, child," Winifred said. "You did not walk 3 days for me to tell you everything in the middle of a path. Come inside." She turned. She walked away. I followed. The house was small. So small I had walked past it twice on my approach without seeing it, although it could not have been than 10 feet from the path. A round house, with a turf roof, a stone chimney, a door so low I had to bend nearly double to pass through it. Inside, the smell of herbs hit me first, dozens of them, hundreds, hanging from the rafters in dried bundles. Mint, sage, wormwood, yarrow, things I did not recognize. Things that glowed faintly in their pots on the windowsill. A small fire. A kettle. 2 chairs. She had set at 2 chairs. She had been expecting me today. Sit, she said. I sat. She poured tea from the kettle into 2 small clay cups. She handed me one. I held it without drinking. She sat opposite me. She did not drink either. The letter, she said. I drew it from my cloak. The seal still unbroken. The red wax still bearing the bird with the star in its talons. She took it. She did not open it. She set it on the table between us. This letter contains nothing you need to know, she said. Your mother wrote it the night before she died. She wanted you to know she loved you. She wanted you to know it was not your fault. She wanted you to know she would have stayed if she could have. None of that is news. You can read it later. Or burn it. The words are not the important part. Then what is? The seal, she said. Look at the seal, child. I looked. The bird with outstretched wings, holding a small star in its talons. It is a falcon, she said, carrying the morning star, the crest of the house of Ravencrest, the house of vampires, older than the kingdom, older than the compact, older than anyone living remembers, except to perhaps 1 or 2. That is not the Ravencrest crest, I said. I know the Ravencrest crest. It is a black raven on a silver field. The crest they show the world, she said. Yes, but not the original. The original they hide. Because the original tells a story they have spent 500 years burying. She leaned forward. She placed one finger on the wax seal. The bird is not a raven, child. It is a falcon. The original house was the house of the morning falcon, the hunters of the dawn. Vampires, yes, but vampires of a particular kind. Vampires who fed only by consent. Vampires who walked in the early light. Vampires who built their first castle on a mountain where the sun touched the snow before any other peak in the world. They were called the Dawnblood, and they were the first. She paused. She looked at me. You carry their line. Child, I did not understand. I waited, she continued. Your mother. The woman who pressed you into the arms of Beatrice Heartwood in the rain 26 years ago. Her name was Lady Vesperine of the Morning Falcon, eldest daughter of the founding line. The true heir to the throne, now held by Caspian Ravencrest. The fire crackled. A log settled. I could not feel my hands. My mother, I said. The words sounded like another person's. My mother was a vampire. Your mother was the elder sister of Caspian Ravencrest. Yes, by the law of the original house. The throne of Castle Ravencrest should have been hers, and after her, yours. I set the cup down carefully, so carefully so that the tea would not spill. I do not know. This seemed important. That cannot be true, I said. It is true. I am a human woman. I have a human heart. I have aged 26 years. You are half, Winifred said. Your father Tobias was a human soldier. Your mother loved him. The Dawnblood are not the Ravencrest of today. They could love. They could choose. They could marry. Their children could be born of mortal women or men. Their children could grow as you have grown. To die one day, like other mortal things. Unless the Dawnblood line ran in their blood strongly enough. And in some children, it did. She looked at me a long moment. Hold out your hand, child. I held out my hand. She took it. Her fingers were warm. She turned my palm up, and then she brought her other hand down. Sharp. A small silver knife had appeared in it from somewhere I had not seen. She drew the blade across my palm. I cried out. Not from pain, from surprise. The blood welled up, bright red, normal red, human red. I started to pull my hand back. She held it. Watch, she said. I watched the cut closed, not slowly, not over hours, in seconds, in 10 heartbeats. The wound knit itself together as I watched, the skin pulling closed, the blood vanishing, until what remained was a clean palm with a thin pink line. And then, the line faded too. No wound, no scar, nothing. You have always healed quickly, she said. Haven't you, child? I remembered. I remembered every cut from a childhood spent climbing, every scrape, every fall from a horse. I remembered my mother gasping at how fast I mended. I remembered my father telling her to stop drawing attention to it, to stop talking about it, to stop noticing. I remembered the time I had broken my wrist at 12 and had been told I would wear a splint for 2 months. The splint had come off after 11 days, the bone whole. The bruising gone. I remembered. I had always known. I had simply not known what knowing meant. What am I asked. You are a daughter of the Dawnblood, Winifred said, and the rightful heir to the throne of Castle Ravencrest. The fire crackled. I sat in the small chair in the small house at the end of the world, and I tried to remember how to breathe. She told me the rest. She told it slowly, with patience. The way you tell a story to a child who is sick and cannot yet sit up. The Dawnblood had ruled the mountain for 1,000 years. They had been kind. By the standards of vampires, they had built libraries. They had taught the human kingdoms how to plant winter wheat, how to channel water through stone, how to read the stars. They had been loved. Feared, yes, but loved. And then, a son was born, 500 years ago, a son who was different, a son who did not believe in consent, or coexistence, or the sole task of teaching the world to walk in the light beside the dark. His name was Magnus. He killed his father. He killed his mother. He killed his elder brothers and sisters. He killed everyone who stood between him and the throne. And then he killed everyone who remembered what the throne had been before. He rewrote the history. He burned the libraries. He commissioned a new crest, a black raven on a silver field. He renamed the line Ravencrest. He told the kingdoms that this was always who they had been, and the kingdoms, terrified, agreed, and he forged the compact, a daughter, from the noblest house, every 2 generations, a symbol of submission, a reminder of what the human kingdoms owed the great vampire line that protected them. The daughters did not always die, but they never came home. This had gone on for 500 years. And my mother? I asked. Vesperin. Where does she come into this? Winifred sipped her tea. Magnus had children. His son had children. His grandchildren had children. The line continued, and in some of those children, the old blood came back. The Dawnblood, the original line. It is not destroyed easily, child. It hides in the heart and the marrow. It waits. Vesperine was Magnus's great-great-granddaughter, Winifred said, and in her, the old blood awoke. Fully, she remembered. She remembered what they had been before. She walked into the Eastern Library at 15 and demanded to know what had been burned, and someone foolish, told her. What did she do? She tried to take back the throne, quietly. From within, she'd gathered allies. A small group, loyal, patient. She planned for 20 years, and her younger brother betrayed her. A small silence. Caspian. Caspian. The name fell between us like a stone into still water. He told their father, Winifred's. He went to the old king, Helios Ravencrest, Magnus's grandson, a cruel man, a brilliant man, and he told him everything. He named the allies. He named the plans. He named his own sister as the leader of a rebellion against the crown. I closed my eyes. And Helios killed her, I said. He hunted her for 3 years. Vesperine had grown clever by then. She had taken a human lover. She had a child by him. She knew what the child would mean to the old king. She knew that if he found the baby, he would crush its skull against the stone floor of the throne room. Because the child carried the Dawnblood, pure and strong. The strongest the line had seen in 500 years, Tobias Mercer said. Your father. Yes, killed in the alley in Vance. Helios sent the assassin. Vesperine escaped with you the same night, hours after his death. She rode for the eastern provinces. She knew of an old midwife who had served the Dawnblood before the Great Burning. A woman who was no friend of the new Ravencrest line. She came to me first, child. She came to this house. The room tilted. I gripped the edges of my chair. You knew my mother. I held you the night you were born, child. I cut the cord. I washed the blood from your hair. I gave Vesperine the cloth that wrapped you and the pendant that hangs at your throat now. I touched the pendant. It was so warm it almost burned. Why didn't you keep me? I whispered. Because she did not stop here. She came. She rested for a night. She gave me the letter. And then she rode west, to Heartwood Manor, because she knew Beatrice. She had known her in girlhood. They had been schoolfellows for a single summer. Vesperine remembered her as a kind girl, a safe girl, a girl who had lost 2 babies and would not refuse a third pressed into her arms in the rain. And the next morning, she rode out again. She rode south. She rode toward Helios. She rode to die, child. She rode to draw him as far from you as she could, and she succeeded. He found her in the southern marshes a week later. He killed her, slowly. He came back to the castle with a piece of her cloak. He never knew there was a daughter. He died of his own corrupted heart 11 years later. Without ever knowing, I could not speak. I sat in the small chair and I could not speak. Ifred reached across the table. She took my hand, the hand she had cut, the hand that had healed. You are the rightful heir, child. Your mother was the elder daughter of Helios. You are her only living blood, by every law that ever bound that throne. The crown is yours, not Caspian's, not his cousin's, not anyone's. Yours. I looked at her, then why, I said. My voice did sound like mine. Why am I a human girl raised in a country manor? Why am I being told this in a hut in a forest? Why did Caspian Ravencrest, who you say betrayed my mother, choose me as his bride 26 years ago, when I was an infant and could not have been known to him? She did not answer. She looked past me. At the door, I turned. The door was open. I had not heard it open. A man stood in the doorway. Tall, pale, dark-haired, warm eyes that caught the firelight like the eyes of an animal looking out from a cave. Lord Caspian Ravencrest, the vampire king. The man who had humiliated me at the altar 3 days ago. The man, I now understood, who had killed my mother. He did not enter. He stood in the doorway. His cloak was wet. He had ridden hard. There was mud on his boots and on the lower folds of his clothing. His face was drawn. His eyes were tired. He looked at me. Ophelia. He said I had risen from my chair without realizing. My hand was on the dagger at my belt. I will not enter, he said, not unless you allow it. I came only to speak. Speak from where you stand, I said. He bowed his head. A small movement. An old movement. The movement of a man who had once been taught how to do such things, and had not forgotten. Winifred was watching him. Her hand was on the table. Near the small silver knife, I do not think she had risen, but I felt that she could, very quickly, if she needed to. You have heard the woman's story, Caspian said. Some of it, not all. There is more I must tell you. I am the only one who can tell you, and after I have told you, if you wish to kill me, I will let you. You betrayed my mother, I said. I did. You let your father hunt her, I did. And you sat at my family's table. For 22 years. Knowing who I was, 22 years. Yes, the fire crackled. I felt the heat of it on the side of my face. Why? I said. The word was small. He looked at me for a long moment, then he said, because I was a coward when I was a younger man, and because I have spent every year of my long life trying to become a different one. May I sit, Ophelia? I will keep my hands on the table. I will not move from the chair you place me in. I only ask to speak. I looked at Winifred. She looked at me, gave a small nod. I gestured with the dagger. He came in. He sat. He placed his hands on the table. I sat opposite him, the dagger between us. Speak, I said. He spoke for a long time. He told me about his sister Vesperine, how she had been the bright one, the favored one, the one with the laugh that filled the castle. He told me how he had idolized her as a boy, how he had followed her into every room, how she had taught him to read. He told me about the day she had come to him and told him what she had learned in the library. The Dawnblood, the original house, the lie, the compact, all of it. He had been 19. He had been afraid. He had not believed her. He had believed his father. Because his father was the king. Because believing your king was easier than believing your sister. When believing your sister meant burning down the world. He told the king everything. He had not known, not truly known, what his father would do. He had thought there would be a trial, an exile, a long unhappy peace. He had not thought his father would kill her. I learned, Caspian said. I learned what kind of man my father was. When I learned what he had done to my sister, and I have spent 481 years becoming the opposite of him. He looked at me. I knew Vesperine had a daughter, he said. I knew it before she rode west, Sud. She told me. She came to me in the gardens. 3 nights before she fled the castle, she showed me your tiny face, wrapped in the cloth that is in the wooden box on Winifred's mantle right now. She told me she was going to hide you. She did not tell me where. She told me only one thing. She said, "Brother, if you have a soul left, keep her safe. Find her one day, watch over her, pay for what you have done." And then she kissed my cheek. And she left, and I never saw her again. He swallowed. He did not cry. I do not know if he could cry, but something in his face did the work of crying. "I searched for you for 22 years, he said. After her death, I knew you had survived. Helios did not. He died believing he had ended the line. But I knew. I searched every household in the kingdom. I searched in secret. I could not let my father, while he lived, know. After his death, I continued. And in the 22nd year of my search, I found you, in Heartwood Manor. You were 4. You sat on your father's knee in the library. He told you a king was coming for you. I was watching through the window. I remembered. Remembered the day. I had not known there was a watcher. I had to bring you close, Caspian said. I had to find a way to bring you under my protection without revealing who you were. The compact was the only tool I had. I went to your father Edmund. He did not know who I was. I told him only that the time had come for a Heartwood daughter to be selected. I told him I had chosen you. He believed me. The compact had been silent for nearly 40 years. He was honored. He was afraid. He agreed. Why? I said. Why bring me close? Why not just kill me? If I was a threat to your throne. He looked at me along. Level look, because I loved my sister Ophelia, and every time I looked at you, I saw her, and because I had killed her, by my silence and my fear, and I would not kill her child, the fire popped. A spark jumped onto the stone floor. It went out. You came to our house every 2 years, I said. You sat across from me. You asked me questions. You spoke to me of philosophy and history. For 22 years. You knew, and I did not. Yes. You were watching over me. Yes. And you decided. 3 days ago, standing at the altar of St. Aldrick's, to humiliate me before the entire kingdom, his hands tightened on the table. I watched the muscles work in his jaw. There is one more piece of the story, Ophelia, and it is the worst piece, and I would have told you in a different place, under a different sky, if I had been given the choice. Tell me here. He nodded. My cousin, he said, Aldrick Ravencrest. Younger than me by 3 years. Son of my father's brother, he is. Ambitious. He has always been ambitious. He has waited a long time for a chance at the throne, and he has hated me for being in his way. What of him? A month ago. Through means I have not yet been able to discover. Aldrick learned who you are. The dagger still on the table. I had not moved it, but my hand was no longer on it. He learned the same things Winifred has told you tonight, Caspian said. That my elder sister had a child. That the child lived. That the child is now a woman of 26 years. He learned your name. He learned where I had hidden you, and he means to kill me. He means to kill you, yes. But not before he uses you. Aldrick is subtle in his cruelty. He will not waste you on a quick death. He will produce you as a claimant. He will use your blood to invalidate my rule, and when he has unmade me, he will dispose of you. Slowly, I felt cold. The fire was 3 feet from me, and I felt cold. He intended to take you on our wedding night, Caspian said. His men were in position. The carriage that was to carry you to Castle Ravencrest. There was an ambush waiting on the 3rd stretch of the northern road. I learned of it 11 hours before the ceremony. I had time only to make a single decision. Refuse me, I said. Refuse me publicly, so that I never enter the carriage, so that I am no longer your bride, so that I am no longer the prize he is waiting to seize, yes. So you chose Rosalind. I chose Rosalind. A girl I do not love. A girl I have never loved. A girl who I knew Aldrick would not consider a true threat. Because she is not your blood. She is not the heir. She is a placeholder. A misdirection. A loud noise made to draw the hawk's eye from the field where the dove is hiding. You used my sister. I used your sister, yes. And I used you. I let you walk to that altar believing you were about to be married. I let you stand in your dress and your veil. I let the priest read the vows, because I needed Alaric to see what I would do. I needed his spies in that cathedral to send him a single message before nightfall. He has not taken her. The bride is not the one we thought she was. The Ravencrest king has chosen another. And then I needed you, specifically, to do exactly what you have done, to leave Heartwood Manor, to come here, to this house, where you cannot be found. You shamed me, I whispered. I shamed you, to save your life, yes. The silence sat between us. It sat for a long time. Winifred had not spoken once during his account. She sat with her hand near the silver knife and her eyes on the door, as if she did not trust the night beyond it. I looked down at my hands, the hand he had healed, the hand that had healed itself. I tried to be angry. I wanted to be angry. I had been angry for 3 days. I had been angry every step of the road east. I had built a small, careful fire of anger inside my chest, and I had fed it with every memory I could find. The look on his face as he walked past me at the altar, the whispers, the way my father had not been able to meet my eyes. I tried to be angry now. I could not, because looking at the man across the table, I did not see the king who had refused me. I saw a brother who had lost his sister. I saw a young man of 19 who had made a terrible choice. I saw a man who had spent 5 centuries paying for it. I saw someone who had stood in the doorway of this hut tonight, knowing I might kill him, and saying so before he entered. I have one question, I said. Anything. My sister. Rosalind. Does she know any of this? He looked at me. There was something in his face I did not like. Ophelia. Does she know? He took a breath. I do not believe so. But what? But in the 3 days since the wedding, since she has been at Castle Ravencrest, I have noticed things, small things. She asks questions she should not know how to ask. She has wandered into rooms she should not have known existed. She has met with my chamberlain in a way that suggests she has met him before. I had assumed that her interest in me was the usual interest of an ambitious noblewoman elevated above her station. I am beginning to suspect it is something else. What are you saying? I am saying that I do not know what your sister is. I only know that the girl who came to my castle 3 days ago is not the girl I have observed at your family table for the last 22 years. Something has changed in her. Or something was always there that I did not see. I do know which is worse. I felt the cold deepen. I thought about Rosalind. I thought about her smile at the altar, the private smile, the smile I had recognized. I thought about the night before the wedding, her tears, her arms around me. I would do anything, sister, anything to keep you from this. Her voice breaking, the way her hand had trembled as she held mine. I thought about it, and I noticed for the first time that her hand had trembled in exactly the same way mine had trembled the day I had killed my first deer at 14, from excitement, not from fear. I had not noticed at the time. I noticed now. Caspian rose. He did not approach me. He moved slowly, deliberately. Every motion announced before it began. He turned toward the door. I will leave you to think, he said. I will not return unless you call me. Winifred has a way of sending word if you choose. There is a great deal you must consider, Ophelia. A great deal you must decide. I will not press you for any of it tonight. He stopped at the threshold. He looked back. For what it is worth, he said. And I know it is not worth much. I am sorry. For the altar, for the years, for your mother, for all of it, I do not ask for forgiveness. I ask only that you stay alive. That is the only thing I have ever asked of you. Then he was gone. The door closed behind him without my touching it. I do not know how long I sat at the table. After he left, Winifred eventually rose. She added a log to the fire. She refilled my cup with tea I had not touched. She placed a blanket around my shoulders without speaking. She left me there and went to her own small bed in the corner of the hut. I sat. I held the cup of tea. I watched the fire. I thought about a woman in the rain 26 years ago, pressing a baby into the arms of a stranger, riding away to die so the baby could live. I thought about a king at an altar, choosing a different bride. To save a life, I thought about my sister, my Rosalind, Woe's hand had trembled with excitement on the night before my wedding. Woe's smile at the altar had been the smile of a woman receiving exactly what she wanted. I would have to go back, I understood this now. I would have to go back to Heartwood Manor. Not to my parents, not to the home of my girlhood. To Rosalind's room. To her papers. To the small wooden chest at the foot of her bed that I had never been allowed to open. I would have to find out what my sister had become, or what she had always been. Outside, it's a small house, deep in the eastern wood. An owl called once, then was silent inside. A woman who had been raised as Ophelia Heartwood, and was now becoming someone else, set down her cup of tea and began, slowly, to plan. I rode west for 2 days. I did not stop at inns. I slept in the open, twice, under my cloak. The horse Winifred had given me was a black mare with a white star on her forehead, older than she looked, faster than she had any right to be. The horse did not tire. The horse did not flinch at shadows. I did not ask Winifred where the horse had come from. Some questions you do not ask. I had grown wiser in 3 days than in 26 years. I reached Heartwood Manor at the second twilight. I did not enter through the front gate. I tied the mare in the orchard. The same orchard where I had played as a child. The same trees I had climbed at 6 and at 10 and at 14. I tied her to the same low branch I had once used to swing from. The branch had grown lower since then, or I had grown taller. I could not tell which. I went over the kitchen wall. I knew the loose stone. The one on the third row. I had used it to escape supper 100 times when I was a girl. The stone wobbled. The mortar had never been replaced. A small thing, a small unobserved thing in a house full of larger, more important ones. I dropped into the herb garden. The basil was overgrown. My mother had not been tending it. My mother had not been tending anything, I suspected, since the wedding. I made my way along the wall in shadow. The kitchen lamps were lit. I could hear the cook humming. The same kitchen song she had hummed for 30 years. A man had betrayed her in her youth. The song was about him. She had been humming it as long as I had been alive. I waited. The cook went to the larder. I went through the kitchen, up the back stair. The servants' stair. The one I had been forbidden to use as a child. The one I had used anyway. Down the long hall, past my own door, to my sister's. Her room was empty. This I had expected. She was still at Castle Ravencrest. The wedding was 3 days from tonight. She would not return to Heartwood Manor until she returned as a queen. I closed the door behind me. I lit a single candle. I stood in the middle of the room and I looked. I looked the way I had been taught to look, by tutors, by governesses, by the slow, careful work of 26 years of preparing for a vampire court, where one learns to see what is not shown. The room was tidy, too tidy. A girl of 22 does not leave her room this tidy when she leaves to be married. A girl of 22 leaves a small chaos behind. A scarf draped over a chair. A book left open on the desk. A pair of slippers forgotten beneath the bed. Rosalind's room had none of these things. Rosalind's room had been cleaned, by Rosalind, before she left. A room cleaned by its owner is a room with a secret in it. I had been taught this by my third tutor, a man who had spent his youth working in the inner chambers of the High Priest of the Silver Flame. He had told me, a noble man does not tidy his own things. If he has done so, he has hidden something. So she had hidden something. I checked the bed first, beneath the mattress, beneath the pillow, inside the pillowcases behind the headboard. Nothing. Then the drawers. Every drawer in the dresser, every drawer in the writing desk, stockings, ribbons, a jewelry box that contained, of all things, the jewelry I had given her over the years, the small things, the modest things, the gifts a sister gives. She had kept all of them. I almost wavered. I closed the box. I moved on the wardrobe. Behind the dresses, inside the boots, inside each glove, nothing. The fireplace, the bricks. I tapped each one with the handle of my dagger, listening for a hollow. Nothing. The floor. I knelt. The floor was wood, old planks, pegged in place. I ran my fingers along the joints, slowly, the third board from the window. It moved, just slightly, just enough. I worked the tip of my dagger into the seam. I lifted the board came up, beneath it, a small cavity. Hollowed out, lined with cloth. The kind of hiding place a girl makes for herself when she is 12 and has discovered she has thoughts she does not want shared. Inside, a leather book. I lifted it out. I sat on the edge of her bed. I opened the cover. The first page was dated 8 years ago. She had been 14. The handwriting was hers. Round, careful. The handwriting of a girl who had been trained to make her letters beautiful. The first entry was 4 words long. Today, I saw him. I read the book. I read every page. I did not skim. I did not skip. I read each entry like it was a confession I had been called as a witness to. The candle burned low. I lit a second from the stub of the first, then a third. The story it told was not the story I had lived. I had lived in a house with a younger sister who loved me. That's been true. It had not been true for 8 years. She had been 14 when she first met Caspian, the visit, the ceremonial supper. I had been 18. I had not noticed her. I had been concentrating on my own performance, on the courtesies, on the small careful work of being observed by a vampire king. She had been at the far end of the table. She had watched him. She had not stopped watching him. She wrote about him for 40 pages, the color of his eyes, the way he held his goblet, the shape of his hands, the small smile he had given the manor cat, the single moment he had glanced down the table at her. He looked at me. He looked at me. He looked at me. For 1 second. He looked at me and I felt my whole life become something else. A girl's infatuation. I might have forgiven that. Sisters fall for the same boys. Sisters get over it. Sisters laugh about it years later. But the book did not stop at infatuation. It curdled, around page 60. The tone shifted. The handwriting became smaller, tighter, more careful. The entries became less about Caspian and more about me. Ophelia took the prize again today. The writing instructor praised her seat. He did not look at me at all. I rode for an hour after she left. He did not return. Mother told Ophelia she looks like a portrait in pearls. Mother told me my dress was very pretty. The word she used for me was pretty. The word she used for Ophelia was beautiful. There is a difference. The difference is the entire kingdom. Father has begun saying her name like a prayer. He never says my name. He says Rosalind, more bread please. He says, Ophelia, when he is being saved. I turned the pages. I turned them slowly. The poison grew, by page 80. She had stopped pretending to be unhappy about it. She had begun being calculating about it. If she dies on the way to the wedding, I would be next. I would be the bride. The compact does not specify the elder daughter, only a daughter. I have read it. The wording is loose. He could choose me. I closed my eyes. She had been 17 when she wrote that. 17. I had been 21. I had still been combing her hair on rainy afternoons. I had been embroidering a handkerchief for her last name day. I opened the book again. I kept reading 6 years ago. She was 16. She had a new entry. I have written to him, no name, the next entry. 2 weeks later, he has written back, the entry after that. I went to the inn at Brook Hollow. I told Mother I was riding with the Vance girls. I met him in a private room. He is taller than I expected. He has Caspian's eyes, the same shape, the same color. But where Caspian's eyes are warm, his are cold. I prefer them. I knew before I read the name. I knew because the world had become a place where I now knew such things before I read them. The next page. His name is Aldrick Ravencrest. He is the cousin. He wants Caspian's throne. He says he can help me have what I want, if I help him have what he wants. We are going to be very good for each other. The candle flickered. I did not look up. I kept reading. The plan was laid out across the next 40 pages. It was patient. It was clever. It was the work of 2 minds, 6 years of letters, of secret meetings, of small acts of poison delivered slowly into the life of the household. She had been the one who suggested to my father, 3 years ago, that perhaps the second best dressmaker in the capital was good enough for me. Father had agreed. He has begun to think of her as less. Slowly, without noticing. It is working. She had been the one to whisper to Mother, last winter, that perhaps I should not be allowed to ride out alone. If she breaks her neck on the southern road, no one will ask questions. I have been suggesting the southern road. She has not yet ridden it. She had been the one for everything. Every small unkindness, every overlooked moment, every casual cruelty I had assumed was the natural texture of family life. My sister. For 8 years I closed the book. I did not cry. I think something inside me had decided, somewhere on the road east, that tears were a thing for women who still had the luxury of being wounded. I had moved past that. I had become something different now. A blade does not weep. I put the book inside my cloak. I extinguished the candle. I left her room exactly as I had found it, the loose board. Replaced, the mattress. Resettled, the dust on the desk. Undisturbed. She would know I had been there. I went down the back stair. I did not stop in the kitchen. I did not visit my mother. I did not visit my father. There was a part of me that wanted to. There was a larger part of me that knew that if I did, if I sat at the table, if I let my mother hold me, if I let my father weep his apologies, I would lose what I had become. I would soften. I would slow. I had 3 that day I could not afford to soften. I rode north. Castle Ravencrest sat on a black mountain. I had never seen it. I had been raised to imagine it. The imagination was correct in every detail. The black walls, the 8 towers, the single bridge over a chasm so deep that the bottom had never been mapped. The mountain was bare. No trees, no grass, just stone. Black stone, polished by 500 years of wind. I did not approach the bridge. I rode the long way around. To the northern face, where Winifred had told me there was a goat path. A path the servants used in the old days. A path that climbed up to a small door in the kitchen wall. The path was still there. The door was still there. The door was locked. I had expected this. I had a key. Winifred had given it to me. A small iron key on a chain. This belonged to your mother. She gave it to me the night you were born. She said one day you might need it. The key fit. The door opened. I closed it behind me. I was inside. I did not see Caspian for the first day. I did not look for him. I had sent a letter ahead, through Winifred, through a network of old loyalties I did not yet understand. The letter had been one line. I am coming. Make no welcome. He had understood. I was certain he had understood. A man like Caspian Ravencrest understands many things from one line. I stayed in the lower levels. The castle had a kitchen staff of 300. No one knew every face. I borrowed a gray dress from a basket of clean linens. I tied my hair under a kerchief. I picked up a tray. I became invisible. I walked the corridors. I memorized the halls. I noted the guards. I marked the chapel. The chapel was at the heart of the castle. A small dark space. Older than the rest of the building. It had been there before Magnus. Before the renaming. Before the lie. It was where the wedding would take place. It was beautiful. The walls were painted with old murals, faded, most of them scraped away in the past centuries. But in the corners, where the brushwork had been protected by stone benches, I could still see them. Falcons, the morning star, the original house. Caspian had not let them paint it over. He had built a kingdom of black ravens. But in his own private chapel, he had kept the falcons. I stood in the doorway for a long moment. I did not enter. I went back to the kitchen. On the second day, I saw Rosalind. She did not see me. She walked through the great hall on the arm of a maid. She was wearing a pale blue dress. The color suited her. She was laughing. The maid was speaking to her about something. Flowers. The wedding flowers. White lilies or white roses. Rosalind preferred roses. She said so with confidence. The maid wrote it down. I watched from a doorway across the hall. She looked the same. That was the worst part. I had thought, foolishly, that the book would have changed her face. I had thought I would see her now and see the truth printed across her features. The greed, the plotting, the 8 years of poison. But she looked exactly like my sister, pale gold hair, round cheeks. The small dimple in her left cheek when she smiled. I had to remind myself. I had to actually whisper it. She is not your sister. She is the woman who has been trying to kill you since she was 16. She passed without seeing me. I waited. I followed. She did not go to her chambers. She went down a corridor I had not yet mapped. She dismissed the maid at a turning. She continued alone. I followed at 20 paces. She went down 2 flights of stairs, through a door, into a smaller hall, through a second door, into a wine cellar. She did not light a lamp. She did not need one. I crouched in the doorway. I watched a figure rose from the shadows at the back of the cellar. Tall, pale, dark-haired. The shape of him was similar to Caspian's. The same family, the same line. But where Caspian moved like a tired king, this man moved like a hunting cat. Aldrick Ravencrest. I saw him for the first time. He stepped into the small light from the doorway. His eyes were the wrong color. Too pale, too bright. The eyes of a stone that has caught light it does not deserve. He smiled at her. She walked to him. She kissed him. It was not a kiss between strangers. It was not a kiss of greeting. It was the kiss of a woman who has been kissing this man for years. I closed my eyes, I opened them. I listened. They spoke briefly. Tomorrow. He is weak. The poison is taking. Roderick suspects nothing. He should be dead before the vows. He will be. The wine at the supper tonight. And the girl, Heartwood, is not a threat. She has run east. Probably to her death. We will send hunters after to be certain. And the throne? Mine. By the morning of the wedding. Yours, in name, as my queen. Together. In all the ways that matter. A second kiss, slower. I crept back. I did not breathe until I was in the upper corridor. I did not breathe until I had reached the small servants' hall on the second floor. I leaned against a stone wall. I breathed there for some time. Caspian was being poisoned. He had been being poisoned. For days. Perhaps longer. Rosalind had been the one feeding it to him. The wedding was tomorrow. He would be dead by the morning of the wedding. I had less time than I thought. I found Caspian in his study, a guard. Roderick, the one Rosalind had mentioned. He stood at the door. He looked at me. I removed the kerchief. I let him see my face. His eyes widened, just slightly. Then he opened the door without a word. I went in. Caspian was at his desk. He looked worse pale, paler than the natural pale of his kind. There was a gray cast to his skin. His eyes were dim. He had not been sleeping, or whatever it was that his kind did in place of sleep. He looked up when I entered. He stood. The motion cost him something. I could see it. Ophelia, sit down. He sat. You are dying, I said. Yes. Poison? Yes. In the wine? Yes. I suspected. I did not know who. It is Rosalind. I have just watched her kiss your cousin Aldrick in the wine cellar. She has been the one administering it. She has been Aldrick's lover for 6 years. Probably longer. He closed his eyes. He absorbed this. The way a man absorbs a blow that has been a long time coming. How long do I have? I asked, without intervention. 2 days. Perhaps 3. The wedding is tomorrow. I will not survive the ceremony. That is the point. Yes. He plans to take the throne, while you are dying, with her at his side, yes, and kill me. After, he opened his eyes, yes. I sat down opposite him. I placed my hands on the desk between us. I have a plan, I said. Ophelia, listen to me first. Then you may speak. He closed his mouth. He listened. I told him. The wedding was set for sunset of the following day. 300 guests. The nobility of the kingdom. Lords. Ladies. 2 of the queens who had been at my own failed wedding. The high priest of the silver flame, who had stood in for the rite at St. Aldrick's, and would now stand in again. The chapel was prepared, white roses. Rosalind's choice. A small irony. The original house of Ravencrest had been the house of the mourning falcon. The crest had borne a small white flower in the falcon's other talon. A wild rose. The rose of the dawn. Rosalind had chosen roses without knowing. Her own family flower. She would carry them down the aisle in ignorance. I sat in the back of the chapel 2 hours before the ceremony. In a black dress. With a heavy black veil, I sat in the last pew. I bowed my head. I looked to any hupst me, like a minor relative of the Ravencrest line, an aunt, a cousin. Someone too old to be noticed. The guests began to arrive. I listened to them whisper as they passed the Heartwood sister. Did you ever imagine? Did you ever the elder one? Disappeared. They say she threw herself in a river. She always was the strange one. Too clever for her own good. The younger one is sweeter, easier. The king made the right choice. I listened. I did not move. The high priest entered the chapel. He took his place at the altar. Caspian entered. He was leaning slightly on Roderick's arm. To any guest who did not know what to look for, he was simply a king at his second wedding. Perhaps tired from a long week of preparation, perhaps overcome with the gravity of the occasion. To me, he looked like a man who would not survive the next hour. He took his place at the altar. He did not look at the back of the chapel. He did not look for me. That was the plan. The music began. The doors opened. Rosalind appeared. She was beautiful. I will not pretend otherwise. She walked down the aisle on the arm of our father, Lord Edmund Heartwood. Who had come, I now realized, because no one had told him not to. He walked her down the aisle the way he should have walked me. His face was hollow. He had aged 10 years in 2 weeks. He did not smile. She did. She smiled the whole way. White silk, white roses, pale gold hair, the small dimple in her left cheek. I waited. I waited until she had reached the third pew from the altar. I rose. I lifted the veil from my face. I stepped into the aisle. A woman in the second pew saw me first. She gasped. A small sound, then a louder one, as the Zulsamasager turned and saw that in a third gasp. A fourth, the whisper traveled up the aisle, faster than I walked. By the time I had taken 5 steps, the whole chapel knew Heartwood, the Heartwood girl. The elder one. Rosalind heard it. She stopped. She turned. I will remember her face for the rest of my life. It went through 3 expressions in 3 seconds. First, surprise, then calculation, then a small, careful mask of horror as her training kicked in. As the actress in her remembered her role, sister, she cried. Her voice was beautiful, trained, strained with just the right amount of joy, sister. You are alive. Oh, thank the silver flame. Thank every saint. She moved toward me with her arms open. I did not move. I waited until she was 3 steps from me. I held up a hand. She stopped behind me. In the doorway, 6 guards entered, Roderick's men. The men who had been quietly loyal to Caspian for 3 centuries. Not Alaric's men. Not the corruption Caspian had been slowly identifying for years. The real ones. They closed the doors, Alaric, halfway down the aisle in his place of honor. Half rose from his pew. I turned to face him. Sit down, I said. He did not. I drew from my cloak a single document. I held it up sealed. Red wax. The bird with the morning star in its talons. This, I said. My voice carried. I had been trained in voice carriage by the second tutor, the one who had studied with the players of the Southern Theater. Is the testament of Lady Vesperine Ravencrest, eldest daughter of King Helios, sister of Lord Caspian, mother of myself, written in her own hand 26 years ago, sealed with the original sigil of the House of the Morning Falcon, witnessed by 3 persons, all of whom signed beneath her hand. 2 of those persons live. One is in this chapel. The high priest had gone very pale. I had stopped at his door 3 hours before the ceremony and shown him the document and asked him a single question. He had wept. He had said his father had been one of the witnesses. He had said he had been waiting for someone to bring this letter for 40 years. He stepped forward. Now, I confirm the seal, he said. It is genuine, by the testimony of my father, who died in this castle 30 years ago, and who told me of this document on his deathbed, and of the bride who would one day bring it. The chapel was utterly silent. Even Rosalind had stopped moving. I looked at Alaric. This document names me as the heir of the original line. By blood, by birth, by the law of the house that stood on this mountain before yours. My uncle Caspian, who stands at this altar, has acknowledged me as his heir. He has named me his successor. He has done so before witnesses. The crown of Ravencrest, by every law that has ever been written, is mine. Alaric drew his sword. It was very fast. Faster than I expected, but Roderick was faster. The blade did not reach me. Roderick stepped in front of me with his own sword drawn, and the 2 blades met, and there was a sound like a great bell being struck, and the whole chapel rose to its feet and screamed at once. I stepped back. Caspian stepped down from the altar. The high priest stepped sideways behind the altar and remained there. He had not been trained for this part. Aldrick drove forward. Roderick parried. Caspian crossed the chin 3 long strides. He was dying. He was poisoned. He should not have been able to move that fast. He moved that fast. He intercepted his cousin between the second and third pew. The fight was short, but it was not quick. Caspian fought like a man who had been waiting 500 years to fight this fight. Aldrick fought like a man who had spent 500 years waiting to be allowed. They had grown up together. They knew each other's movements. Each parry was a memory. Each thrust was a grievance. I watched. I did not run. A queen does not run from her own chapel. I had decided that. Walking up the aisle behind me, Rosalind had begun to move toward the side door. I turned. I caught her wrist. She tried to pull away. I did not let her. I had her by the wrist, and we stood in the aisle, and we looked at each other. For what I now understood was the first time in our lives. The first time I had ever seen her. Truly seen her. Without the lie between us, sister, she said. Her voice still beautiful, still trained. Do not call me that, Ophelia. Please, please. You don't understand. I can explain. I can explain everything. I read your book. Her face went still. What book? The leather one. Under the third board from your window. The one you have been writing in since you were 14. The one you forgot to take with you when you came to be married. She did not breathe. I had not thought a person could not breathe for so long. I read every page, I said. I read about the riding instructor. I read about the Southern Road. I read about the dressmaker in the capital. I read your letters to Aldrick. I read your plans. All of them. 8 years, Rosalind. You have been trying to make me small. For 8 years she found her breath again. She used it for the only weapon she had left. He never loved you, she said, Caspian. He never. He was watching you for a reason. He was using you. He was using all of us. And he was the only thing in my life worth wanting. And you. You were going to take him, without ever loving him, without even understanding him. And I loved him. From the first time I saw him, I loved him. And you would have walked off with him, without ever knowing what you had. And I would have spent the rest of my life watching you not know. I looked at her. I looked at her for a long time behind us. The clang of swords. The footsteps. The shouting. You did not love him, I said. You wanted him. There is a difference. The difference is the entire kingdom. Her own words. From the book, she heard them. She knew I had read every page. She stopped trying. The light went out of her face. It was the strangest thing I have ever watched. A woman draining of herself. As if every careful mask she had built since she was 16 had been held in place by a single thread. And I had cut it. She did not weep. She simply besheathed smaller, behind us. A different sound. A wet sound. The sound of a sword finding home. I turned. Aldrick was on his knees. Caspian stood over him. Aldrick's sword was on the floor. His hands were at his chest. He was looking at his cousin with an expression I had not expected. Not hatred. Not fear. Something closer to surprise. Cousin, he said. Cousin. Caspian said, you should know. What? Aldrick coughed. He coughed once. He smiled. The smile of a dying man who has saved one last knife for the end. Your father, he said. Helios. He did not order your sister killed alone. Caspian went still. He did not order it alone, Aldrick said. His voice was wet now. His hands were red. There was a second. He spoke with his hand on my father's shoulder. My father held the cup that toasted the deed. Vesprine's death was family business, a family meal. You sat at the table that night. You did not ask why we were celebrating. You drank from the cup. You raised it. To the king's health. Caspian's face. I will not describe it. I do not have the words. I did not know, he said. The words were small. The words were a child's words. You should have asked. Aldrick smiled one last time. He fell forward onto the stones of the chapel floor. He did not move again. The chapel emptied slowly. The guards did the work. Roderick spoke quietly to the high priest. The high priest spoke to the guests. The guests filed out in stunned silence. There would be talk. There would be much talk. There would be talk for the rest of the lives of every person in that chapel. They had come for a wedding. They had received an inheritance. Rosalind was taken away by Roderick himself, with 4 guards. She did not resist. She did not look at me as she passed. She did not look at Caspian. She walked between the guards as if she were a young noblewoman being escorted to a carriage. She held her chin up. The mask, after all, was the only thing she had ever truly owned. My father stood in the doorway. For a long moment, he looked at me. I did not go to him. He turned. He walked away. I do not know what he told my mother when he got home. I know they sent a letter. 10 days later. I know I have not yet opened it. There will be time. Caspian and I were the last in the chapel. He stood near his cousin's body. He was not looking at it. He was looking at the painted falcons in the corners of the walls. The dim ones. The faded ones. The ones he had saved. I sat at that table, he said. I did not. I drank from that cup. You did not know. I should have asked. I crossed the chapel. I came to stand beside him. I did not touch him, but I stood close enough that the cloth of my dress touched the cloth of his sleeve. Caspian. He did not look at me. I have known you for 22 years, I said, from across a table, from the other side of a study, from the foot of a stair as you arrived. I have watched you, the same way you watched me. You did not see me watching. I was 8 years old when I first noticed. The way you looked at my father when you thought no one was watching, the way your face settled when he laughed, the way your eyes followed me through the room. Not the way a man watches a woman, the way a man watches over a child. He closed his eyes. I did not understand it then, I said. I did not understand it 3 days ago. I understood it last night, in Winifred's hut, when you told me about the gardens. About my mother showing you my face. I paused. You are not your father, Caspian. You drank from a cup you should not have drunk from. You were 19. You have spent your whole life setting that cup down. You set it down the night you began searching for me. You set it down the day you found me. You set it down every day for 22 years. And you set it down 3 days ago. When you walked away from me at the altar to keep me alive, he opened his eyes. He looked at me. The light in them was tired. The light in them was old. The light in them was the look of a man who had been waiting for absolution 500 years. And had stopped expecting it. I do not deserve. No one does. That is what mercy is. A small silence. He bowed his head. It was not the bow of a king to a subject. It was not the bow of an uncle to a niece. It was the bow of one penitent before another. The bow of a man who has been given more than he asked for, and does not yet know how to receive it. He straightened. He looked at me. You should not be here, Ophelia. You should be running. You have a kingdom. You have a crown. You have just claimed it before 300 witnesses. I am not running. What will you do? I looked around the chapel, the falcons, the white roses, scattered across the aisle, where they had been dropped when the swords were drawn, the high altar, the painted ceiling, the mountain beneath us, the world. I will do what my mother could not, I said. I will restore the original line, the house of the mourning falcon. I will not do it alone. I cannot do it alone. I will need an uncle, a king who knows the new houses, a teacher who knows the old laws. I will need a partner. He looked at me. I held his gaze. Not a husband, I said. I am 26. I have not yet decided who I am. The girl I was 3 weeks ago would have married you because she was told to. The woman I am tonight will not marry anyone until she has been a queen long enough to know whether marrying is what she wants. You will rule beside me, Caspian, as regent, advisor, as family. The throne is mine. You will help me hold it. He did not speak for a long moment. Then he sank to one knee in the same chapel where, 3 days before, he had knelt for my sister to save my life. With his head bowed, with his hands open. Your Majesty, he said. It was the first time anyone had said the words to me. The first time, perhaps, that anyone had said them to anyone in 500 years. Here, in this castle, on this mountain. The first time the rightful queen of the Ravencrest line had stood in this chapel and been called by her right name. I almost cried then. For the first time, I almost cried then. And I did not. I reached down. I touched his shoulder. Stand up, Caspian. He stood. There is a story I told myself when I was a girl, that my life was a long preparation for a single moment. The moment at the altar, the moment when the king took my hand, the moment when my purpose was fulfilled. I was wrong. The altar was not my purpose. The altar was the place where my real life began. The day a vampire king refused to take me as his bride was the day my real life began. The day my sister smiled at him from the front pew was the day I learned to see. The day I rode east, alone, in the early dawn, with a sealed letter in my pocket and a pendant burning at my throat, was the day I became someone capable of carrying a crown. I sit now in a study that was once my mother's. The walls have been repainted. The black has been stripped. The walls are pale gold, the color of a falcon's breast, the color of dawn. The kingdom has not transformed. A kingdom does not transform in 6 months, or in 6 years. Some of the old nobles refused my coronation. Some of them have begun, quietly, to plot. There will be wars. There will be other betrayals. Some of them, I do not doubt, will come from people I am presently learning to trust. Caspian rules beside me. He is teaching me. He is learning from me. We do not speak often of what passed between us in the chapel that night. We do not need to. My mother Beatrice, the woman who raised me, we exchange letters every week. She lives still at Heartwood Manor. My father lives with her. He has not written. He has spoken to me only once, when he came to court to give a piece of testimony about an old land dispute, and he stopped at my throne and looked up at me and said, "Forgive me, daughter." And I said, "Do." And that was the end of it. It will never be more than that. Some things you do not get back, but it is enough. Rosalind is at a convent in the northern provinces. A silent order. She wears gray. She tends the herb garden. The Mother Superior writes to me twice a year. She says my sister does not speak. She says my sister works hard. She says my sister, sometimes, sits in the chapel for hours, looking at the candles. I do not know what she thinks about. I do not ask. I do not visit. Perhaps one day, not yet. You do not become a queen by being wanted. You become a queen by surviving the night you are most unwanted. By riding east, alone, toward the truth by coming back. I am Ophelia of the House of the Morning Falcon, first of my name, Queen of Blackthorn by blood and by right. And this is how my life began, not at the altar, in the place beyond it, where everything I thought I was taken from me, and everything I had truly been, all along, was finally allowed to wake up.